Hello and welcome to Mile High Reefers. I'm Scott Anderson, and I had planned on doing a completely different video today. I've shot all the footage, it was going to be kind of cool, but my copper-banded butterfly died, and really I just couldn't get him to eat. I tried all the foods I could think of, including mastic, the LRS frozen food, I tried shrimp, I tried the clams in the half shell, I tried live brine shrimp, I tried Aptasia, live Aptasia, and it never ate and unfortunately passed away. This was very disappointing. But this prompted me to think about what this video today should be about. And really I think it should be about failure. Because we all have failures. And the only way to get to a tank that looks like this one is to fail. Unfortunately, it's gonna happen no matter how hard you try. Something's gonna go wrong. There'll be equipment failures, there'll be livestock issues, stuff happens. It's unavoidable. So I thought I'd just talk about some of my failures that I've had in the past, and maybe some of you out there can learn something. Now, some of these will be probably stories that I've told before, but I think it's kind of important to put them all together so you can see how often I've screwed up and how much I got wrong, and I was able to learn from it and get to a point where my tank looks like this. So I've been keeping fish for almost 20 years. Now, it's been the last 11 years that I've been keeping reef tanks, and the first reef tank I set up was my 29 gallon, and it worked pretty good for like 3 to 6 months, and then it just stopped growing coral, and I couldn't figure out why. I took samples to the LFS, and no matter what I did, I couldn't keep coral alive. Well, after like 6 years, I finally decided I was going to try something else. I was going to upgrade. I felt like I knew enough to make something work. So I bought my 90 gallon, and with that came a salinity gauge. And when I tested the water in it, my salinity was way off. It was like 1.031 instead of 1.026. Way off. So that's why all my coral was dying for 5 years. Horrible. So that was a major failure. When I got the 90 gallon set up, I got it to where it started looking good. I had tangs in it, everything was starting to look good, and then my tangs got ick. Well, I wasn't quarantining. I mean, I know to quarantine now, but at the time it didn't seem like that big of a deal. To fix that, I had to tear the tank down, catch all the fish, put the fish in quarantine, leave the 90 gallon fallow for 6 weeks. It was such a pain. So, I mean, I start off the 90 gallon with ick. Ugh. So that was a pain, but I got through it. I mean, that's the best way, in my opinion, to get rid of ick completely, is to treat your fish in quarantine with copper and then leave the tank fallow for 6 to 8 weeks so that the parasites inside the tank don't have anything to feed off of and die of starvation. That's the only real way that I know of to eliminate ick or marine velvet completely. So that was horrible. Also, early on with the 90 gallon, I had a massive coral die-off, and I couldn't figure out why. It was horrible. I couldn't figure it out. The skin was just falling off the coral. It was horrible. I lost like all of my SPS, a bunch of my LPS, and I never figured out what it was. I think I know now what caused that. At the time, I was running biopellets, and as you probably know if you watch my channel, about 6-8 months ago, I overdosed this tank with biopellets and bleached out all of my SPS, killed a bunch of the bird's nests in the tank, and it was pretty much horrible. And then I look back, and I've had this happen in my tank 2 or 3 times now, and I am pretty much convinced that the big die-offs I've had in my tank are due to biopellet overdoses. So I'm pretty much done with biopellets. I'm not touching them again. They're not worth it in my opinion. So I still might do some carbon dosing, but biopellets are completely out of the picture for me. I'm done with them. But it was a massive failure early on, and it's something that haunted me for years. It haunted me in the 90 gallon, and it haunted me in the 210, and it took me almost 5 years to figure out what was causing these mass die-offs. But any one of those could have been enough just for me just to throw up my hands and say, screw it. But I stuck with it, and I've got a really awesome tank now because I took the time to learn the hobby and learn what was the best way to do it, at least for me. And then, of course, we all have equipment failures. They are completely unavoidable. The biggest equipment failure that hit me was I'd had a heater fail in the on position, and it stayed on for who knows how long. I didn't catch it right away, but the tank went to 88 degrees. So remember I was just talking about that first mass die-off that I had? Well, right after that is when that thing failed. So I lost half of my coral to the mass die-off, and then I lost another half of what was left to the heater failing on. It was horrible. Luckily, I didn't lose any fish. But the coral, I mean, that was hundreds of dollars in coral that I lost. It was terrible. So it's a huge loss, right? And then, of course, most recently, you'll all know the massive failure I've had with fish. And it all starts with the failure of my 5-gallon. Now, the 5-gallon is 100% my fault. I didn't pay attention to the tank like I should have. So when it crashed, I took the coral out of the 5-gallon and the fish out of the 5-gallon and put them in the 24-gallon nano. And it should have been fine, except my leopard wrasse was in there. And, you know, he was chasing the clownfish around, and I thought it'd be fine. You know, lights were going to go out by morning. I figured everybody would have settled in, no problem. Well, when I got up in the morning, one of the clownfish had jumped out of the tank. I couldn't find the clown goby. So that's when I pulled the little tiny clownfish out and put him in this tank. And of course, he survived. But unfortunately, I lost my clownfish, and I ended up finding my clown goby dead later. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized this guy is probably why the Watchman goby died. He's probably why my blenny jumped out of the tank. Yeah, that stupid little leopard wrasse killed a bunch of fish. And it wouldn't surprise me if he's part of the reason the cowfish didn't do well. If the cowfish was stressed and not getting enough food, I didn't notice it at the time, but it wouldn't surprise me if he was picking on the cowfish too. Now, of course, cowfish have been another failure for me, and I pushed the limit on hard to keep fish sometimes. The leopard wrasse I got really lucky with right up until I put him in the 210, and he got stuck in the rotor tube and died. Yeah, another massive failure. I've had 2 cowfish. The one I put in this tank originally just disappeared on me. Obviously, he's dead because that was years ago. He can't still be in there hiding somewhere. And of course, the cowfish that was in the 24-gallon, he died too. So when you buy harder fish, there's a good chance that you're gonna have a failure with it. And I knew that going into the copper band butterfly situation. The first copper band butterfly was a fantastic fish. It ate really well. This fish was gonna do so well. I thought it was gonna hang with the tanks and be perfect. But I lost power on the 24-gallon tank. I didn't have a backup air bubbler on there, and the fish died. Another massive failure. This second copper-banded butterfly I bought wasn't eating very well. It was just picking at food. I knew better than to buy it, but it was my birthday. I wanted to buy a fish, and you know what? I've been keeping fish for 20 years. I thought I was up to the challenge of getting one of these guys to eat. I had done plenty of research. I thought I could do this. He was picking at food. How hard can it be? Well, it ended up being too hard. No matter what food I tried, and I probably spent more money on food for this fish than I actually did on the fish, and I still couldn't keep it alive. So this is kind of one of those things. But when you think about it, a lot's gone right. Most people will tell you not to keep 8 tangs in the tank. I've made it work. mixed reef is probably the hardest type of reef you can keep. When you have leathers putting toxins out that the SPS don't like, that becomes a problem. When you have LPS growing, stinging everything, that becomes a problem. When you have your SPS overgrowing other stuff, that's a problem. When you have polythoas growing all over everything, that's a problem. But through all of these trials and tribulations, I learned how to do this. I learned how to put together a tank that's beautiful, that pushes the limits in some areas, and looks fantastic. And the only way to learn this stuff is to try, fail, and try again. So that's kind of where we're at. Failure is part of this hobby. So thank you for watching this episode of Mile High Reefers. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.
Always remember, only duffers go with the flow. Thanks for watching.